The scent of leather and ionized air still clung to my new iPad. I swear, I'd been practically drooling over this thing for months. Every spare hour I wasn't pulling shifts at the warehouse, I was watching reviews, comparing specs, and agonizing over the color. Finally, after a grueling couple of months of overtime, I'd walked into the Apple store, credit card in hand, and made the purchase. It was more than just a gadget, it was a symbol. A symbol of my hard work, my perseverance, and a small victory against the odds. Growing up, we never had the nice things. Everything was hand-me-down, second-rate, or simply out of reach. This iPad represented a tangible shift, a sign that I was finally building the life I'd always dreamed of. I was sitting on my porch, basking in the late afternoon sun, finally having a moment to myself. The iPad rested in my lap, its sleek aluminum casing cool against my skin. I was about to dive into a new graphic design tutorial, something I'd been wanting to learn for ages, when I heard the shrill voice cutting through the tranquility. John Cooper. Get over here this instant. It was Karen Johnson, my next-door neighbor. I swear, just hearing her voice sent a shiver of annoyance down my spine. She was the epitome of suburban entitlement, a walking, talking stereotype. Always finding something to complain about, always looking down her nose at everyone, and always with that air of superiority that made my blood boil. I sighed, closing the iPad and reluctantly standing up. I knew whatever she wanted, it wouldn't be good. I walked down the short path separating our lawns, bracing myself for the inevitable confrontation. Yes, Karen? I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral, even though every fiber of my being wanted to tell her to get lost. She stood there, arms crossed, her lips pursed into a permanent frown. Her eyes, usually narrowed in suspicion, were now wide with something I recognized with a sickening lurch in my stomach, jealousy. It was a look I'd seen her give me before, whenever I managed to achieve something, no matter how small. Whether it was a new tool for my garden or a slightly nicer car, she always seemed to resent my progress. I saw you with that thing, she said, gesturing dismissively toward my porch. The iPad. The new one. Her voice dripped with disdain, as if the very existence of the device offended her. I cautiously replied, yeah, I just got it. Been saving up for a while. I even managed a small, polite smile. I really tried to be civil with her, for the sake of neighborhood peace. But Karen seemed immune to basic human decency. Saving up? For that expensive piece of junk? Don't you think you should be spending your money on something more practical? She said this with a distinct sneer. Like what, Karen? More practical, like another one of your designer handbags? The words were out of my mouth before I could stop them. I instantly regretted it. I knew engaging with her was like throwing gasoline on a fire, but I was just so tired of her constant judgment. Her face flushed a deeper shade of red. That's none of your business, John Cooper. What I spend my money on is my prerogative. What is your business, young man, is being so flashy and ostentatious? I took a deep breath, trying to regain my composure. Karen, I worked hard for this. I'm not trying to be flashy. I just wanted something nice for myself for once. Nice for yourself? What about me? She actually said that, completely unironically. I stared at her, dumbfounded. What about you, Karen? What does my iPad have to do with you? She puffed out her chest, her eyes gleaming with a disturbing intensity. I've decided I want it. And since you clearly don't appreciate the value of such a sophisticated piece of technology, she paused, taking a dramatic breath, I'm willing to take it off your hands. I just shook my head. Karen, I'm not selling it. Her eyes narrowed to slits. Oh, but you will. I'm offering you a very generous price. She reached into her ridiculously oversized purse and pulled out a crumpled dollar bill. Here. $1. Take it or else. I burst out laughing. I couldn't help myself. The absurdity of the situation was just too much. You're serious? You want me to sell you my new iPad, the one I worked my butt off to buy, for $1? I said, still chuckling. She glared at me, her face now contorted with rage. Don't mock me, John Cooper. I'm being perfectly reasonable. You should be grateful I'm even offering you anything. Take the dollar, give me the iPad, and we can all go on with our lives. I composed myself. Karen, the answer is no. I am not selling you my iPad for $1, or for any amount of money for that matter. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'd like to get back to what I was doing. I turned to walk back to my porch, hoping to end this ridiculous encounter. That's when she snapped. You arrogant, ungrateful. She sputtered, her voice rising to a near shriek. You think you're so high and mighty, don't you? Thinking you can just flaunt your fancy gadgets in front of everyone. Well, I won't stand for it. I won't let you get away with this. I stopped in my tracks, turning back to face her, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. I knew this wasn't going to end well. Karen, please, just go home. You're embarrassing yourself. Embarrassing myself? You're the one who should be embarrassed. Refusing to sell a simple iPad to your neighbor for a fair price. It's harassment, that's what it is. Pure harassment. I stared at her, aghast. Harassment? Karen, I'm standing on my own property. You came over here, demanded I sell you something, and now you're accusing me of harassment because I said no. I could see the wheels turning in her head, a malicious glint in her eyes. This was exactly what she wanted. She had baited me, and now she was ready to pounce. She pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling as she dialed. That's it. I'm calling the police. I'm being harassed. Harassed, I tell you. She yelled into the phone, her voice shrill and piercing. I could hear the faint voice of the 911 operator on the other end. I felt a wave of disbelief wash over me. She was actually calling the police. Over an iPad. Over $1. The sheer absurdity of it all was almost comical, but the underlying threat was very real. I knew how these things could escalate, how a simple misunderstanding could quickly spiral out of control, especially for someone like me. I'd seen it happen to others, and the thought of it happening to me filled me with a cold, creeping fear. Yes, officer. I'm being harassed by my neighbor. He's refusing to sell me his property and he's being aggressive and threatening. She continued to rant into the phone, embellishing the story with each passing word. I stood there, frozen, unsure of what to do. Should I try to reason with her? Should I just go inside and ignore her? I knew neither option was likely to work. Karen was determined to make a scene, and she wasn't going to stop until she got what she wanted, which, in this case, seemed to be my misery. A wave of despair washed over me. This was my life now, wasn't it? Constantly being subjected to the whims and prejudices of people like Karen Johnson. Constantly having to prove my worth, to defend my right to exist, to simply be left alone. I silently pleaded with whatever higher power might be listening, just let this end quickly and peacefully. The sound of sirens in the distance shattered the uneasy silence. My heart pounded in my chest. They were actually coming. This was really happening. Karen, still clutching her phone, smirked at me triumphantly. They're on their way, John Cooper. You'll see. You can't get away with this. I wanted to scream, to yell, to tell her exactly what I thought of her and her petty, racist behavior. But I knew that would only make things worse. I had to remain calm, to try to explain the situation rationally when the police arrived. But even as I made that decision, a part of me knew it was futile. In situations like this, rationality often took a back seat to preconceived notions and biases. Within minutes, 2 police cruisers pulled up to the curb, their flashing lights casting an eerie glow on the manicured lawns. 2 officers emerged, their faces grim and professional. One was a young woman, her hand resting on her holster. The other was an older man, his eyes scanning the scene with a practiced wariness. They approached us cautiously, their expressions unreadable. Karen, seeing her moment, launched into a dramatic performance, pointing at me and sobbing theatrically. "Officer! Thank goodness you're here. This man has been harassing me. He's refusing to sell me his property and he's been making threats. I'm afraid for my safety." The officers turned their attention to me, their eyes narrowing. "Sir, is this true? Did you threaten this woman?" The older officer asked, his voice stern. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Officer, that's not what happened at all. She came onto my property, demanded I sell her my new iPad for $1, and when I refused, she started yelling at me and called 911. I pointed to the iPad, still sitting on my porch. "It's right there. I just bought it. Why would I sell it for $1? The officers exchanged skeptical glances. I could see they were already leaning towards Karen's version of the story. The young female officer spoke, her tone accusatory. "Sir, we received a call about harassment. Can you explain why you were yelling at this woman?" "I wasn't yelling at her, officer. She was yelling at me. I was simply defending myself. I was starting to feel panicked. I could see this was going nowhere fast. She was playing the victim perfectly, and it was working." The older officer stepped closer to me, his expression hardening. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step away from the property and put your hands behind your back." I stared at him, incredulous. "What? You're arresting me? For what? For refusing to sell my iPad? We're detaining you for questioning regarding a harassment complaint. Please comply with my instructions." I hesitated for a moment, my mind racing. I knew resisting would only make things worse. But the injustice of it all was almost unbearable. I had done nothing wrong. I was the victim here, not the perpetrator. With a sigh of resignation, I reluctantly complied, turning around and placing my hands behind my back. The officer quickly cuffed me, the cold metal biting into my wrists. The humiliation was overwhelming. Here I was, a law-abiding citizen, being treated like a criminal, all because of Karen Johnson's twisted sense of entitlement and her blatant racism. As the officer led me towards the police car, I caught a glimpse of Karen. She was standing on her lawn, a smug look on her face. She had won. She had successfully weaponized her privilege and her race to punish me for daring to own something nice. Just as I was about to be shoved into the back of the cruiser, a voice rang out, cutting through the tension. "Hold on. Wait just a minute." It was Ms. Hernandez, our other neighbor, the one who lived across the street. She was a kind, hard-working woman who always kept to herself, but she wasn't afraid to speak up when something wasn't right. I saw her rushing towards us and then she spoke. "Officers, you need to listen to me. Everything that woman is saying is a lie. I saw the whole thing. She came over here and started yelling at John for no reason. She demanded he sell her his iPad for $1. He did nothing wrong." The officers stopped, their expressions shifting slightly. They looked at Ms. Hernandez, then back at Karen, who was now visibly flustered. "Ms. Hernandez, what are you talking about? This man threatened me." I was terrified. Karen tried to insist. Ms. Hernandez, however, kept on talking. "That's not true, Karen. It was the other way around. I'm standing here as a witness that Karen is lying to you officers. I saw everything from my window." Ms. Hernandez was undeterred. "I saw everything, officers. I was watching from my window. Karen came over here and started harassing John. She demanded he sell her his new iPad for $1. When he refused, she started screaming and threatened to call the police. He did nothing to provoke her. She's lying to you." The officers looked at each other, their faces filled with doubt. They clearly weren't sure who to believe. The young female officer approached Ms. Hernandez. "Ma'am, are you willing to make a formal statement about what you saw?" Ms. Hernandez nodded firmly. "Absolutely. I'll swear under oath that Karen is lying." Karen, realizing her plan was unraveling, started to panic. Her face turned red, and her voice rose to a fever pitch. "You're all against me. You're all conspiring against me. I'm the victim here. This is outrageous." She began stomping her feet and waving her arms wildly. "I want to speak to your supervisor. I want to file a complaint. This is discrimination." She then lunged towards Ms. Hernandez, screaming, "You meddling busybody. I'll get you for this." The officers quickly intervened, pulling Karen away from Ms. Hernandez. She struggled against them, her eyes filled with rage. "Get off me! Get off me! I'll sue all of you!" As the officers tried to restrain her, Karen's behavior became increasingly erratic. She started kicking and screaming, spitting insults and threats at everyone in sight. Finally, one of the officers, fearing she would hurt herself or someone else, pulled out his taser. "Ma'am, calm down. We don't want to hurt you. But if you don't cooperate, we'll have to use force." Karen ignored the warning, continuing to resist and scream. With a sigh of resignation, the officer deployed the taser. Karen let out a piercing shriek and collapsed to the ground, her body convulsing. The officers quickly handcuffed her and helped her to her feet. As they led her towards the police car, she glared at me, her eyes filled with hatred. "You haven't heard the last of this, John Cooper. I'll make you pay for this." I watched as they drove her away, a mixture of relief and exhaustion washing over me. The young female officer approached me, her expression apologetic. "Sir, I'm so sorry for the misunderstanding. We should have listened to you from the start. Thank you, Ms. Hernandez, for speaking up." She unlocked the handcuffs and released my wrists. "You're free to go, Mr. Cooper. And again, I apologize for the inconvenience." I rubbed my wrists, feeling the sting of the cuffs. I looked at Ms. Hernandez, who gave me a warm smile. "Don't worry, John. She won't bother you again." I nodded, grateful for her support. As I walked back to my porch, I picked up my iPad and stared at it. It no longer felt like a symbol of victory. It felt tainted, stained by Karen Johnson's hate. But as I sat down and began to work on my graphic design tutorial, I realized that I couldn't let her win. I couldn't let her steal my joy, my peace of mind, my sense of accomplishment. I would continue to work hard, to pursue my dreams, and to build the life I deserved, regardless of what Karen Johnson or anyone else thought. And that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all.